The acid rain of Viridian hissed against Thalia's ceremonial armor as she surveyed the aftermath of the skirmish. Steam rose from the metallic plates protecting her slender frame, the pale green glow of her skin dimmed by the grime of battle. At 22 cycles, she was the youngest member of the Sarati Honor Guard. Her position earned through skill rather than the military legacy of her family. "Secure the prisoners," ordered Commander Nera, Talia's mentor. The commander's obsidian scales gleamed despite the downpour, her posture revealing nothing of the brutal efficiency with which she had led the ambush against the human research team that had ventured too close to the sacred boundary. 8 humans knelt in the mud, their research uniforms torn and bloodied, electronic restraints binding their wrists. Thalia had never seen humans this close before. Their soft, varied skin tones fascinated her, so different from the scaled green complexions of her own people. "Protocol dictates no witnesses," Nera announced, her voice carrying across the battlefield. "We leave no evidence of Sarati presence." Beyond the boundary, the words sent a chill through Thalia that had nothing to do with the rain. She had killed in battle before it was expected. Honorable, but execution of prisoners seemed different somehow. "Squadron Alpha, prepare for disposal," Nera continued, turning away as if the humans were nothing more than waste to be processed. Thalia was assigned to check the restraints. Before execution, a final, cruel courtesy of Sarati justice, moved down the line methodically until she reached the last prisoner. He was younger than the others, perhaps close to her equivalent age. Unlike his companions, who stared at the ground in defeated resignation, this human met her gaze directly. His eyes were an unusual color amber flecked with gold and held neither fear nor hatred, only a calm intensity that caught her off guard. "Your name?" she asked quietly, the translator at her throat, converting her sibilant Sarati speech into human standard. "Elian Reeves," he replied, voice steady, despite the blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. "Xenobotanist. You were studying." "The boundary flora. We meant no trespass." Thalia glanced toward her commander, who was occupied with the squadron preparations. "You crossed the markers." "The storm shifted them," Elian said. "We thought we were still in the neutral zone." Something in his words rang true. The boundary markers were notoriously unreliable during the acid storm season. This might truly have been a mistake rather than an intentional violation. 5 cycles ago, my brother was killed by humans who claimed to be lost," Talia said, her fingers checking his restraints with practiced precision. Elian nodded slowly. "And 5 cycles ago, my sister was researching peace protocols with the Sarati before she disappeared near the boundary." Their eyes locked again. Something passed between them. Recognition of the endless cycle of retribution that defined relations between their species. "Final honors," called the squadron leader, traditional announcement before execution, without fully understanding why. Thalia pressed her thumb against the hidden release point on Elian's restraints. The lock disengaged with a soft click. "Ow." "When I move away, head southeast through the gully," she whispered, her face impassive. "The sensor grid has a blind spot there during storms." Elian's eyes widened slightly. "Why?" "Because perhaps there's another way," Thalia responded. Stepping back into formation as the execution squad raised their weapons, the commands came in rapid succession. 3... Thalia made a subtle gesture, and the squadron's attention shifted momentarily to a movement in the underbrush distraction she had triggered with her boot. 1. 5 bodies fell. The 6th had vanished into the storm-lashed forest. Later, when questioned about the missing prisoner, Thalia would claim a restraint malfunction, a plausible explanation during the corrosive rain. But she knew her decision would eventually be discovered. The Sarati forgave many things, but mercy toward humans was not among them. As she boarded the transport vessel, Thalia caught a final glimpse of movement at the forest's edge, watching from the shadows before disappearing into the dense foliage. She had just changed both their fates forever. 7 years passed like a fever dream. Thalia sat motionless in her cramped cell, watching dust motes dance in the single shaft of light that penetrated the narrow window. Her once vibrant green scales had faded to a dull olive, the ceremonial markings of her family ritually burned away when her treason was discovered. It had taken 2 years for the truth to emerge. A surveillance drone had captured her act of mercy, the footage eventually making its way to Commander Nira. The betrayal, in her mentor's eyes, had been worse than any physical punishment. Thalia's trial had been brief, her guilt predetermined. Rather than immediate execution, the council had chosen a slower death imprisonment in the void cells, where disgraced Serati were forgotten. Her name was struck from family records, her achievements erased. A guard appeared at her cell door. "The matriarch summons you," he announced, voice devoid of emotion. Thalia blinked in surprise. 7 years without a visitor, and now the highest authority of the Serati demanded her presence. They led her through corridors she hadn't seen since. Her imprisonment, her muscles aching from disuse. The matriarch's chamber was as she remembered, austere, dominated by a circular stone table inlaid with ancient star maps. Matriarch Zindra studied her with cold eyes.
Once.
Thalia had been considered a promising candidate for the elite guard that protected the matriarch. Now, she was less than nothing. "Reports from the boundary grow concerning," Zindra said without preamble. "A coalition forms their humans and exiled Serati working together." Thalia kept her expression neutral, though her pulse quickened. "I've been imprisoned for 7 years, matriarch. I know nothing of this." "Perhaps, but you started it." Zindra activated a holographic display. "The human Euphridalian Reeves has become their leader." The image showed Elian, older now. His youthful features hardened into those of a man who had seen too much. He stood among a mixed group of humans in Serati, addressing some kind of assembly. "They call themselves the Convergence," Zindra continued. "They advocate for diplomatic relations between our peoples, sharing of resources, mutual defense pacts." She spat the words like poison. "Is that not preferable to endless conflict?" Thalia asked quietly. The matriarch's eyes narrowed. "They spread dangerous ideas. Several minor clans have already sent representatives to their outpost. Some youth have even defected." "Why tell me this?" "Your public execution has been scheduled for tomorrow's dawn. The council believes your death will send a message to those who might sympathize with the Convergence." Thalia nodded slowly. She had expected death eventually. Quick or slow, made little difference now. "I requested to inform you personally," Zindra added, "because I wanted to see if you regretted your choice." Thalia looked at the image of Elian, at the diverse group surrounding him, something they had built together, though worlds apart. "No," she said simply. "I do not regret it." The matriarch studied her for a long moment. "Then tomorrow, you die unrepentant." Back in her cell, Thalia sat in meditation, preparing herself for the end. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her impulsive act of mercy had apparently sparked something larger than herself, yet she would not live to see it flourish as darkness fell. She heard unusual sounds guards speaking in hushed tones, movement outside her normal routine. Something was happening, but it mattered little to her now. The night deepened. Thalia dozed, dreaming of amber eyes and a voice asking, "Why?" Woke to the soft click of her cell door opening. A hooded figure slipped inside, moving with silent precision. "Who?" she began, but a hand gently covered her mouth. "The one who never forgot," whispered a voice she recognized despite the years. "The execution grounds are being prepared, but we have a different plan." The hood fell back, revealing Elian's face, lined now with experience, but still bearing the same intensity that had caught her attention 7 years ago. "How did you get in here?" she whispered. His smile was grim. "The Convergence has friends in unexpected places, and we must hurry. They'll hunt us both. Let them try." He offered his hand, a gesture of trust between equals. 7 years ago, you showed me another way. Now I'm returning the favor." Thalia hesitated only briefly before taking his hand. The execution arena was carved into the ancient volcanic rock of Mount Sereth, its tiered seating filled with thousands of spectators. Executions of traitors were public affairs warnings and entertainment combined in the Serati tradition. At the center stood the Pillar of Judgment, a massive crystalline structure that would channel concentrated solar energy when the morning sun crested the mountain. Those condemned would be atomized, their very molecules scattered to prevent resurrection in the afterlife. The crowd's murmur intensified as dawn approached. On the highest tier, the Council of Elders watched impassively, with Matriarch Zindra. At the center, Commander Nera sat beside her, face locked in rigid control. 4 guards led a prisoner into the arena. The crowd fell silent, then erupted in jeers and shouts. It wasn't Thalia. The hooded figure was taller, broader, distinctly non-Serati in movement. When the guards reached the center, one yanked back the hood, revealing Elian's face. Gasps rippled. Through the crowd, human in the sacred execution, grounds unprecedented, sacrilegious, Zindra rose to her feet, fury evident even at a distance. What is the meaning of this? Where's the condemned? The guard captain stepped forward. Matriarch, this human was found attempting to infiltrate the prison. The traitor Thalia is missing. Chaos erupted among the spectators. Zindra raised her hand for silence, her amplified voice cutting through the tumult. Secure the human for interrogation. Deploy all forces to locate the escaped prisoner. That won't be necessary, called a clear voice from the arena entrance. Talia walked into the execution grounds. It's unbound and flanked by a dozen figures, both human and Serati, wearing the insignia of the Convergence. She looked nothing like the defeated prisoner of yesterday. Her posture was proud, her faded scales cleaned and oiled to a subtle sheen. I present myself willingly, she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the arena, but not as a prisoner. The guards moved to surround her group, weapons raised. Hold, ordered an elder from the Council Vorin, oldest of the 12. Let her speak. Thalia nodded gratefully. For 7 years, I have paid for my crime of mercy. Today, I come not to beg forgiveness, but to offer opportunity. She gestured to her companions. The Convergence extends formal diplomatic recognition to the Serati Dominion. We propose an end to hostilities and the beginning of structured negotiations. This is absurd, Nera interjected. The Convergence has no standing. They are outcasts and aliens. We control 6 former border outposts, countered Elian, moving to stand beside Talia. We've established sustainable agriculture that survives the acid seasons. Our medical facilities have developed treatments for cross-species diseases. He paused. And 3 minor Serati clans have already formed trade agreements with us. This revelation sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd. Impossible, Zindra declared. No true Serati would ally with humans, an elegant Serati. Female stepped forward from Thalia's group. Yet here I stand, daughter of Clan Varys, representing our people in the Convergence. Recognition flickered across Zindra's face. Clan Varys was small, but respected, known for their bioengineering expertise. Vorin, the elder who had called for Thalia to speak, raised his gnarled hand. The council will hear this proposal. Elder Vorin, Zindra protested. We have fought the humans for generations, Vorin replied calmly. What has it gained us besides dead children on both sides? I for one am curious about this alternative. The arena fell silent. Talia and Elian exchanged glances. We request formal diplomatic status, Thalia continued. Protection for our delegation while negotiations proceed. Vorin nodded slowly. A reasonable request. Does the council agree to a stay of execution and preliminary diplomatic recognition? One by one, 7 of the 12 elders raised their hands in agreement, a bare majority. Zindra's face hardened, but she was bound by council protocol. The execution is suspended pending diplomatic discussions. Secure quarters will be provided for the ... delegation. As guards escorted them to the diplomatic wing, Elian whispered to Thalia, Phase 1 complete. Now comes the hard part.
Leah
Watched Nara's retreating form, the commander's rigid posture betraying her rage. Yes, she agreed quietly. We actually have to create peace. The diplomatic quarters were luxurious compared to Thalia's cell, but they remained a different kind of prison. 3 days had passed since the interrupted execution, filled with preliminary discussions that seemed designed to stall rather than progress. Talia stood at the window, watching twin moons rise over Mount Sarath. Behind her, Elian and their small team reviewed strategy for tomorrow's council session. They're divided, noted Kalen, the Serati representative from Clan Varys. Vorin, And his progressives genuinely seem open to dialogue, but Zindra controls the military. And Nera will follow Zindra's lead, Talia added, turning from the window. My former mentor believes compromise equals weakness. Elian looked up from the holographic display of trade routes. We need to demonstrate tangible benefits, something beyond abstract ideals of peace. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Commander Nera herself, alone and unarmed. The room tensed. Callan subtly positioned herself between Nera and the others. I come unofficially, Nera stated, her gaze fixed on Thalia. May we speak privately? After a moment's hesitation, Thalia nodded to her companions. It's all right. When they were alone, Nera circled the room slowly, examining the diplomatic preparations. 7 years, she finally said. 7 years I've wondered what corrupted you, my most promising student. Nothing corrupted me, Thalia replied. I made a choice. To betray everything you were raised to believe. To question it. There's a difference. Nera stopped pacing. Zindra plans to nullify the diplomatic protection tomorrow. She's convinced 3 more elders to change their votes. Talia's scales bristled with alarm. Why tell me this? Because despite everything, I trained you, and I want to understand. Nera's composure cracked slightly. Before they execute you, I need to know why. Thalia considered her former mentor carefully. Come with me. She led Nera to a small communication terminal and entered a series of codes. A recorded image appeared children, both human and Sarati, working together in a greenhouse filled with hybrid plants. This is the Convergence's primary education center, Talia explained. These children know nothing of the hatred that defines our generation. You see different forms, different biology, but not enemies. More images followed medical facilities where cross-species treatments were being developed, agricultural projects adapting earth crops to survive Viridian's harsh conditions. This is what Elian and I envisioned that day in the rain, Thalia said softly. Not betrayal, but possibility. Nera watched in silence, her expression unreadable. The Sarati believes strength comes from purity and isolation, Thalia continued. The Convergence believes it comes from adaptation and cooperation. History will judge which approach better serves our survival. Pretty words, Nera replied, but Zindra will not be swayed by children planting flowers. I don't expect to sway Zindra, but what about you? Their eyes met teacher and student, separated by ideology, yet bound by shared history. I cannot help you, Nera finally said, moving toward the door. But I will think on what I've seen. After she left, Elian emerged from the adjacent room. You trust her? No, Thalia admitted, but I planted a seed. Whether it grows remains to be seen. Kayan moved closer, his hand finding hers. Over the days since her rescue, the professional distance between them had gradually diminished. Was an unspoken connection, born in that moment of mercy years ago and nurtured by their shared vision. If Zindra succeeds tomorrow, he said quietly, we have extraction plans. Running would validate every accusation against us. Dying would end everything we've built. Thalia turned to face him fully. There's another option. We address the public, not just the council. The arena broadcast system reaches every Sarati household. They'll cut the transmission. Not if we move quickly enough. Her eyes gleamed with renewed purpose. Sometimes, revolution requires a spectacle. Elian smiled, recognizing the determination that had first drawn him to her. Impulsively, he leaned forward, his forehead touching hers in the traditional Sarati gesture of deepest trust. Tomorrow, then, he whispered, we make history one way or another. The council chamber hummed with tension as all 12 elders assembled for the final vote on the Convergence proposal. The public galleries were filled to capacity, with the proceedings broadcast throughout Sarati territory. Dahlia and Elian stood at the center of the chamber, flanked by their delegation. They had spent the night preparing for this moment, knowing Zindra planned to revoke their diplomatic status. Matriarch Zindra opened the session with cold formality. Before we proceed to deliberations, I must address a security concern. Evidence has emerged suggesting the delegation has used their diplomatic access to plant surveillance devices throughout the complex. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. This is a fabrication, Elian stated firmly. Nevertheless, Zindra continued, the Council must vote immediately on whether to continue these negotiations or classify the delegation as hostile infiltrators. Elder. Vorin rose shakily to his feet. This is a regular matriarch. Procedure dictates the delegation should respond to accusations before any vote. Security concerns override standard procedures, Zindra countered. Thalia recognized the trap. Their status was revoked. They would have no platform to speak. It was time for their contingency plan. Before this vote, Talia announced, her voice carrying clearly, the Convergence exercises its right to present final evidence. Without waiting for permission, Elian activated a small device. The chamber's main display screen flickered, then showed a recorded conversation between Zindra and two military commanders, planning to neutralize the delegation regardless of the Council's decision. Gasps and shouts erupted from the gallery. Zindra's face contorted with fury. Unauthorized. Access guards, seize them. Wait. The commanding voice came not from the Council, but from the chamber entrance. Commander Nira strode forward, her ceremonial armor gleaming. The recording is authentic. I was present at this meeting. The chamber fell silent. Narazindra's most loyal supporter was challenging her publicly. You overstep, Commander, Zindra hissed. No, Matriarch. You do, Nira addressed the Council directly. For generations, we have taught that our strength lies in tradition and isolation. I believed this without question. She paused, gathering herself. Yesterday, I investigated the Convergence claims independently. A new image appeared on the Disciplinera herself, visiting a Convergence outpost, witnessing firsthand what Thalia had shown her. What I found was not weakness or corruption, but innovation. Advancements in medicine that could save thousands of our people, agricultural techniques that could end the seasonal famines. Nara's voice strengthened. Are we so proud that we would rather watch our children starve than learn from humans? The Council chamber erupted in debate. Elder Vorin called for order, his ancient voice cutting through the chaos. I move for a public vote, he declared, not just by the Council, but by all citizens watching these proceedings. Our future should be decided by those who must live with the consequences. Unprecedented, Zindra objected. Who's this moment? Vorin replied calmly. What followed was extraordinary. Using the emergency broadcast system, a planet-wide referendum was conducted. The results, streaming in over the next hour, showed a clear division among the Sarati, with 63% supporting formal relations with the Convergence. Zindra, maneuvered and publicly exposed, had no choice but to accept the outcome. The diplomatic treaty was approved, with Thalia appointed as the official Sarati liaison to the Convergence. As sunset painted the sky crimson, Thalia and Elian stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic complex, watching vessels from both worlds dock. At the newly established joint spaceport, did you ever imagine that day in the rain, that your act of mercy would lead to this? Elian asked. Thalia shook her head. I only knew I couldn't watch you die. I couldn't let them execute you. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining, in a gesture that bridged their biological differences. Some might call it destiny. I prefer to call it choice, she replied. Every step of this journey has been a choice to show mercy, to seek understanding, to believe in something better. Nara approached, now wearing the insignia of both Sarati Command and the Convergence of bridge position created during the treaty negotiations. First medical exchange team has arrived, she reported, and 3 more Sarati clans have requested Convergence representatives. Thank you, Commander, Thalia said formally. then added, "For everything." Nera nodded, her gaze softening slightly before she departed. When they were alone again, Elian turned to face Thalia fully. "There will be resistance. Generations of hatred don't disappear with one vote." "Of course," she agreed. "But for the first time, there's a path forward that doesn't end in more bloodshed." The last light of day caught the faded markings on her, scales scars of her past that she now wore proudly. Elian traced them gently with his fingertips, a touch that once would have been unthinkable between their species. "7 years ago, you asked me why," Thalia said softly. "Why spare an enemy?" Now I understand. It was never about sparing an enemy." Her eyes met his, reflecting the first stars appearing in the twilight sky. "It was about recognizing that there was no enemy at all, just another person caught on the opposite side of a boundary neither of us created." Their foreheads touched. In the Sarati gesture of connection, a bridge between worlds that had begun with a single act of mercy and now promised to transform both their civilizations. On the horizon, the twin moons rose together, casting dual shadows that merged into one.